We thought in this session it would be very worthwhile to sort of give ourselves a bit of a breather, take a big deep breath and look back at what we've been discussing and what we've learned and what we've listened to over the past day and a half, and really find out what some very big cheeses in the industry have to think about what we've heard in the last day and a half. So please welcome the founder and CEO of Igloo.com, Richard Downes, the Chief Executive of Acromas Travel, Susan Hooper, Deloitte Industries Lead for Travel and Aviation, Alistair Pritchard, the Managing Director of Advantage Travel Centres, Julia Lobu Said, and Fraser Ellicott, the Customer Operations Director of TUI UK and Ireland. We're very grateful to them. And before I quiz them about their feelings about how the conference has gone, how the convention has gone, what they think about it all, I want to remind you that this is one of our interactive sessions. I really do want to hear some questions from you. Don't miss this opportunity to quiz them or to tell us what you've thought of the last day and a half, because as I said at the very beginning yesterday morning, this really is an opportunity for all of us on the stage and off the stage to exchange ideas and thoughts and look back on the last 12 months and perhaps look forward to the next 12 months and what challenges or opportunities there might be for the travel industry. So again, many, many thanks to the panel for taking the time out and obviously for, I'm guessing, concentrating very, very hard over the last day and a half about your thoughts about what we've heard. First of all, I'd really like to sort of trot through you all and just ask you, was there anything that stood out in the last day and a half, either something that surprised you, something that horrified you, something that you heard that perhaps you hadn't thought of before? I'll start nearest to me.
I think for me, it's my first ABTA, I've had a fascinating 2 days. Probably the first day, I got a little bit scared by the amount of change and technology that is around in the world today. And one of the key things that stood out for me was when Graham Codrington said, and I think his expression was, if the rate of change outside your business is greater than inside, then your irrelevance is growing. And for me, that really kind of made me think about what we're doing within TUI. And there's a lot of technology change coming. You've seen Mitu talk about the My Thompson app, digital assistant. So we've got a lot of technology introduction coming in the business, but actually, is it fast enough? And one of the biggest things that I'm taking back is, are we doing enough, quick enough, fast enough, and to engage with all our employees? And we have about 17,000 in the UK. And they've got to embrace that change as well.
I mean, certainly I think I can say on behalf of the organisers, the intention was never to terrify everybody witless and send them home in a total panic, and I hope that that's not what we've done. But perhaps this convention, more than any other, has highlighted some of those issues.
I think it absolutely has, and I think, Fraser's absolutely right, it was quite scary, but actually really exciting, and I think it really just demonstrates as an industry the opportunity that we have, and actually how innovative we are, how we can use innovation to really take the businesses forward. But I think the thing also for me outside of technology that really resonated with me, particularly today, I think with Baroness Susan Greenfield, who last year I did not get at all. I really did this year. I really understood it much better. I thought it was fantastic, but just this whole emotional engagement, how we have to, how we have to have empathy with people, how we have to treat people like people, the fact that our body language, how we look at people, the eye contact is still so much more important, and I don't think we can forget that. Technology is here to enable us and to move the business forward, but how we talk to people, how we treat them is as important as well.
I suppose it is a good opportunity perhaps now to reflect on the fact that I'm sure everybody would agree, we don't want to let the technological tail wag the dog, as in wag, and force the industry to go in areas that it doesn't want. Do you think there is a danger of that?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of talk about technology, and there's been quite a lot of talk about big data as well, and that does sort of send the fear factor into people. Actually, for me, the really important thing is to cut through all of that and really understand how you use your data and how you use a lot of external data that's available in a world that is very data rich now. Many companies implemented ERP systems 10, 15, 20 years ago, very few companies at this stage, and particularly across the sector, have really embraced how they can use that. And so rather than people being, I think, scared of that, it is working out how you optimise that and how you use that data and use analytics to then drive behaviours within the organisation and also drive improved financial performance through better interaction with consumers and customers and how you engage with them better.
Susan, anything that jumped out for you in the last day and a half?
I have to say, I think everyone has to take back what they've heard and integrate it into their own lives with a bit of balance, because if you walked away, being afraid after the first half day, Susan Greenfield put you back in order and said, be afraid of using too much technology because it fries your brain. And I think you just have to put it into the context of how it fits in with your business. The one thing I would say that I was missing, if I was to maybe look critically at the past 2 days, is real customer insight. And I don't mean sort of trends and confidence factors, but real insight into who our customers are and what we're doing to better meet their needs. I think there's been some radical changes with the recession. We seem to be coming out of it, but as a result of it, there's massive changes within the customer bases that you need to better understand in order to really make sure your product is suitable, regardless of how you communicate to them or through what channel, what medium.
So instead of looking at what mobile devices the customer is using, perhaps look at what's going on in their heads as far as what their lives are, sociological changes or behavioural changes.
It's not instead of, it's as well as. Yeah. I think you know that's the beauty of travel. It's it's a multifarious type of industry with all these different things, and technology is new for most people in the industry, relatively new, although I'd say as an industry we're leading in many areas as well on that. And therefore it can be a bit frightening. But the reality is we deal with customers every day, and we tend to shortchange the understanding there almost more than the understanding the new technology on the block.
Okay, well I'm not going to miss the opportunity because I've got a panel of experts, so I'm going to quiz you exactly on that in a moment. I haven't warned any of you, but that's what we'll do. We might as well. But just finish off, any highlights or anything that stood out for you?
I guess what stood out for me is really the juxtaposition of yesterday was about the machines are coming. You've got to be with the machine or get out of the way. And so that, for me, that was a takeaway for yesterday. Today was, almost paradoxically, it's about, early this morning, was about the experiences, engagement, connectivity with people. And people inside and outside, your suppliers and your customers. That inside-out service is crucial to any business, because if you control the machines, it's the people that control the machines. I don't think we're in an AI world, an artificial intelligence world, where machines yet control us. But we have got to control the machine, and it's the companies, I think, that manage that process and are on top of their game with technology, but and their people and how they liberate their people through technology. I think that will make a difference.
I suppose I probably could mention now, I don't know how many of you have read online today about what Michael O'Leary's been up to when we come to the interface between travel companies and the online world. Forgive me if you've all read it already this morning, but it amused me when I saw it that Ryanair decided it would be very good to do a Q&A session on Twitter with Michael O'Leary and anybody that wanted to join in. And I think for a lot of people this was very, very tempting, but unfortunately his first answer to his first tweet question was, is that a photograph of you 4? Now, I would suggest that that's probably not the correct way for the travel industry to connect with tweeters and onliners, and forgive me, anybody that could help. So from my own point of view, that made me laugh, but it is very relevant to what we've been discussing here, that you should be very careful when dealing with new media, because if you're not sure of what the etiquette is in a particular new media, you can fall very, very foul of it. I want to come back to Susan's point, because I think it's really interesting that that customers clearly have changed a lot in the last 12 months, because our worlds have changed a lot, both demographically, economically, socially. Alistair, maybe from your point of view, I'm sure that this is something that Deloitte's been looking at extensively. How would you characterise the travel customer? I mean, any insights you can give us today?
Well, as you'd expect, it's all about consumer segmentation and understanding the different types of consumer and the various touch points and points at which they interact with your business. and making sure that that is seamless, whichever way they choose to interact. And I think we talked about it over lunch, but we have a sort of shared phrase that you use in your business, we use in our business, which is sort of moments that matter, and understanding those moments and making a real difference to your consumer in those moments will drive a huge amount of loyalty from them, but also put you at the top of their list when they're thinking about planning their next holiday or whatever it might be, or the next travel arrangement. So I think that's really critical to sort of think through your consumer journey and where is it the touch points. And I don't think it's just in the booking stage, of course. It's throughout, it's post, and it's frankly in that period in between holidays when they're haven't even started to think about the next one. Those could be the moments that matter actually as well.
I suppose, as Charlie was saying just before we broke for lunch, about that period, post-Christmas period, when that is the moment when people are looking, dreaming about their next holiday and bemoaning the fact this one's nearly over. Obviously, all of you have leadership roles within the industry, the wider industry, and within your own organisations. Looking forward to between now and the next ABDA convention, what would you think would be your number one challenge or issue that would be facing you in the next 12 months?
I think there are different areas. I think within the business, so internalised ones, and you've got the external factors. I think internally, I think a big part of what our business is about is really about nurturing talent and bringing talent in. Again, we heard about Generation Y. We have a lot of Generation Y individuals within the business, but actually, are we creating the right environment to bring out that entrepreneurial spirit that they've got, that they desire to have? Are we suppressing them? Are we allowing them to flourish? How can the business benefit? So I think internally, it's really looking at actually what are the factors that are changing out there, and how do we encourage that right blood in. I think externally, there are huge amounts of challenges for the industry. I don't really know where we start with that. I think, for the business that I'm involved with, it's making sure we stay close to people like ABDA, stay close to the individual bodies. I think stay close as an industry so that we are aware of them and that we do understand them, because I think sometimes we don't have all the information and it's misinterpreted. I think communication can be misinterpreted. So it's been really clear as a industry how we can really make a difference on some of these challenges.
Just picking up on that, what do you mean when you say things have been misinterpreted or communication hasn't been?
I think we don't always get all the information. So if you think about the consultation that's going on with package travel rates, we don't have all the information. We don't know all the information yet. We can go on what we have. And I think it's those sorts of times where actually, we need to collectively decipher a communication back to the relevant bodies so that we aren't speaking as united as we can. Because things are going to change, and actually if we're not putting ourselves forward right now, we're going to lose out.
Fraser, do you agree that perhaps things could be done a little better as far as the industry working together and communicating together?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think I have to say, this isn't just a plug for ABDA, but I think ABDA have done a really, really good job over the last couple of years with a lot of the regulatory changes about trying to get the industry to work together. Clearly, there are some issues. There are big differences of opinion around the package travel directive, and we heard Richard, his view on that at earlier session yesterday. However, we are stronger as one, as an industry, without a shadow of a doubt, to enable us to influence governments and regulation. You are far more powerful as one. So finding a way to work together is really key. If I can move on to sort of leadership challenges, your initial question, for us and for me, having just taken over the role 1 month ago, which is really within TUI UK about bringing all our customer-facing roles together under one division, which is customer operations. And the key challenge that I have and my team have is how we get our whole community to embrace technology. When you think about retail, which is just under 5,000 travel agents in all the 700 shops over the UK, it's getting them to embrace the web, which is a real historical challenge, and that's something that we've really got to think about, how we get our agents in our shops to embrace the web and support it, and actually move more from a sales culture into sales and service. So actually trying to tailor and personalise the experience and the holiday for each and every customer For 5.5 million, that's not easy, but that's my biggest challenge.
Do you think, I mean, obviously, when we talk about agents, they have, and we've talked about this a lot since yesterday morning, they have such a wealth of experience and knowledge, and then they're constantly being told that technology is the way ahead, and some snotty-nosed kid is going to be able to tell them, you know, how to do their job in a way better. And that, I mean, that must be, from an outsider's point of view, that must be a source of disquiet.
Look, people tell great stories. You can get it online, and you can get great video content online that tells a story that brings the excitement of the holiday to life. People do it just as well, if not better. Some of our best agents, they tell stories. That's what gets people to book a holiday, and that's what brings them back. So I think, you know, enabling the people with technology is fantastic, but ultimately they make the difference.
Yeah. Richard, what keeps you up at night?
Although we're technology for us is mission critical. You know, it's like fuel in an aircraft. You can't go anywhere without it. But ultimately, it's about people. You know, it's about the pilot in the plane. We don't have planes, but to take that analogy, you know, for us, it is, if we can continue to ensure that we've got the most appropriate, the best-in-class people for our business, and creating, I don't necessarily like culture, but like somebody said earlier, but it is a culture that is of continual learning and to strive to be and continue to be the number one. And if we can do that and make and continue to make the most important thing in our business, which is to continually learn and to push the boundaries of customer service, then I think that's an ongoing challenge.
Susan, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would say is either the number one thing that you personally are worried about or want to achieve, or the industry should as a whole?
I think I'd just add that finding the right people, the leadership challenge with respect to technologies, finding the right people to integrate into your organization that get the commercial side and get the fact that actually 9 times out of 10 we're defining something which has never been done before. So there's very little arrogance associated with the work. The need to work together with those who have been around for 10, 15, 20 years doing the job as it was before. Trying to get those two groups to work together constructively is probably the biggest challenge, I would say. And I think it's important to realize that arrogance doesn't really have a place in that. Just because the technology is understood by an individual doesn't put them ahead of the game. On the contrary, the challenge is really how to work with the others to find out how to improve the overall product experience for the customer.
I'll just add,
yes, sure.
I think the other thing as an industry that we really need to start thinking about is really bringing, I talked before about, the importance of team. I know you mentioned there, Susan, but just about getting new talent in from a completely different perspective. I think, we have great, we've got great colleagues in the industry. There are some very experienced people here, but I think actually we need to learn from other sectors. We need to learn from other industries. We're so siloed in our approach, which is really frustrating. And I think actually if we can create the right type of environment within our business. I think for too long we've been seen as the poor relation in a sector. I think if we can try and just kind of shake that image. We are professionals. The industry's become a lot more professional, and by doing that, I think we'll encourage a different breed of person coming into the businesses.
Well, Alistair, I mean, obviously I want to ask your view on challenges for the industry as a whole, but particularly on that point about talent and perhaps churn and people coming and going, or getting people from other industries. Is that something that this industry is good at, cherry picking from other places, or does it tend to be a linear one?
In terms of cherry picking, I think at the sort of, if you like, for want of a better word, the grassroots level, then not necessarily. A lot of the people that join organisations are people who have enjoyed travel themselves and have those travel experiences, and particularly those that have been sort of well travelled. Those individuals have experiences that they can bring to the consumers, whether that's in a retail environment, whether that's call centres or other, that can help pass that on. In terms of more senior leadership, well, I think there are things, and we'll probably come on to talk about that, about other people who could potentially come into the industry who would bring different experience and background. I would just like to pick up on sort of a couple of points that have been sort of talked about. On the industry leadership piece, I think one of the things that I've been quite surprised hasn't particularly come up over the last couple of days has been the recent ECJ ruling. And as an industry, I think it's quite important that there's a voice on that and the impacts. I think there will be quite a few businesses who will already be starting to look at their business models and consider the impact because of this ruling on Toms. So I think that's something as to add to the regulatory pressures, the package travel directive, etc. That will be another area as an industry to focus on.
As an analyst, what do you think the impact will be?
Well, our current view is that, and in discussions with the CAA, we don't think that anything will happen immediately, but over the next 6 to 24 months, that the impact of that will come in as Toms gets applied to wholesale operations. People will have to look at the transport scheme, but also a number of businesses will, and have already started to, because we've been engaged to do that, look at their model about whether they move offshore. Of course, in the long, when I say offshore, I mean outside of the Toms regime. I think that given the state of, and I think it was briefly talked about yesterday, where the European Parliament's sort of stage of elections are, it's going to be sort of 5 years before they can bring in reform. And actually, I think our initial view is that reform will probably look to bring more companies into the Toms regime, even outside of the current Euro area. So I think watch this space is the answer, but we are already seeing businesses start to look at their business model as a result of that ruling a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, well, you touched on it though. You talked about people at a more senior level. I'd just be fascinated to know, either an actual person or a type of person, if you could pick a person from outside this industry and parachute them into a senior role in this industry, who or what kind of person would it be? Why don't we start from the end and come towards me?
Well, I think if I can mix both of those things, I think the industry is quite linear. We tend to recruit from early on, and historically it's been kind of reps in resort that have then worked their way up. And actually, whilst there's been a lot of kind of entrepreneurship within companies, actually the external companies that have been more entrepreneurial have generally come from outsiders in. So if you think Travelzoo, for example, or Last Minute, or indeed Igloo, I'm a kind of latecomer. I've been 15 years now, but I still consider myself a latecomer to this industry. And so I think, and that's no bad thing that I don't think that others have come in and seen things from a different perspective. And which leads me to your question. I think someone like Sarah Milligan, the kind of Geordie comedian, very straight talking, gets to the point, no nonsense, but does it with humour and charm. Someone like that, because I think there's a lot of noise in this industry in certain areas, and someone like that as a celebrity, if it was aimed at a celebrity that we may all know, would be great in the industry.
Okay, very good. And also you could, if you want to, give us suggestions for people that might come on this stage next year as somebody you'd love to hear from rather than join the industry. But anybody, either an actual person or a type of person that Susan, you think would benefit the industry?
Well, this is a little left-wing, and they certainly wouldn't come up on the stage, but I think, as mentioning that the key challenge is how to integrate technology. The only reason I had children was because they teach me how to program my DVD, and that's moved on quite significantly since I originally thought that about 16, 18 years ago. And I've renamed them Help Desk 1 and Help Desk 2. And they are actually really, really useful to point out what you should, you thought you knew, but you really haven't got the faintest idea. To get younger people, I know that it's a bit contrary to my own business, but to get younger people into pointing out what we're doing wrong and why, without any kind of strings attached, i.e. employment or whatever, to observe, I think would be incredibly useful. I don't think I'd suggest them as speakers here next year, though.
You never know, never know. Anyone spring to mind?
There's probably a couple of people. There's one who obviously couldn't join us and wouldn't, I'm sure, if he was still alive. But Steve Jobs has obviously been talked about quite a bit. I think what he did in terms of creating a vision and coming up with something, frankly, before everybody knew they wanted it, it would actually bring some quite interesting dynamics to the industry. I think, and sort of links that more recently, Angela and I can't really pronounce the surname, Herrans, I think it is, who wasn't until very recently the chief exec of Burberry, has taken a business that was renowned for chavs and put a huge amount of focus into the product, into the service, and has created a vision there that has turned a business around that's gone from 2 billion valuation to 7 billion valuation, and obviously has now just announced the move to Apple. So I think somebody like that who's taken the product and taken the service and redefined it.
I think I'm right in saying also the most highly paid FTSE 100 chief executive.
Yeah.
So only somebody like Apple, I think, has got deep enough pockets for.
I think it's about 26 million, I think it was.
Yeah. Julia, anyone that you'd like to see?
I'd like to see somebody that can highly motivate. Somebody that is really engaging with the team. Somebody that is thought of as really special. Someone that delivers constantly, consistently delivers the same service. And the only person I could think of was Father Christmas.
Yeah, I think we would all like, maybe somebody from Disneyland, Mickey Mouse. Finally.
For me, I think someone that has been in the press quite recently, just in the last few months, that is truly inspirational. And she's only, I think, 15 or 16, is that
Malala.
Yeah, from Pakistan. And to stand up for what you believe in, and regardless of all the odds, and how they're stacked against you, it's such a spirit and courage there should be an inspiration for all of us. So speaking your mind and sticking to what you believe in and the truth, I think for me is something that would really help us.
Well, we'll put the call in to try and get her on next year. If she's not collecting her Nobel Peace Prize, which I'm sure that she missed out on this year, she might just get next time round. We've got a few minutes for questions, so let's put the lights up if we can. Thank you very much. And anybody that wants either to ask a question, or also we'd love to hear your suggestions of somebody maybe that you'd like to see on the convention stage floor, or any questions or comments for our panel. Who wants to kick us off? I bet somebody on the back row probably will, if nobody else is. We go to microphone Joe on microphone 1.
Hi. I struggle a bit when there's this constant thing that only people from the outside of the industry are actually good. There are so many examples. I agree you need a mix, but there are so many examples of actually people coming from outside the industry, and they actually cannot survive in the travel industry.
And what is it that they, Joe, I'm going to ask you back, what is it that they struggle with, do you think, coming from the outside?
I think they actually really struggle with everybody assumes that travel is easy and they don't get the dynamism of the industry. So operationally, travel is far more complex than FMCG. Yeah. And I think so often we've seen big branded people come into the travel industry, and they very often don't survive.
Let's get a comment from our panel, and I'd love to hear also, because obviously we've talked about people at the top coming in, but also we had comments about talent at the bottom coming up, and perhaps sometimes not getting the right mix of talent. So any comments from your own experiences about how you arrange your own organisation? Just a quick comment on what Joe was saying there.
I disagree, actually, Joe. I mean, I think you're right that there is a point at which, when you come from outside, you just don't get it, and actually we've seen a lot of examples where we've had that, particularly at senior levels. They come in for a short period of time and they go. I just feel with the world moving as it is, there is so much more that we can learn, particularly on the technology side, that we can learn from other industries that could work for us. But yet we're not, we're quite blinkered in our approach. I think, I've seen it in our business, we make excuses why things won't work. We go round in circles, it doesn't need to be perfect. We just need a bit of inspiration, a bit of motivation to try something a bit different. And I think just challenge the status quo. Just because we've done it this way for such a long time, it doesn't mean it's right. There are other sectors that can I think we can learn from. But I do get the point that actually it can be quite difficult to get the industry to really fit in or make their role work.
And there has been a lot of talk yesterday and today about the retail industry and whether they do, and again, companies like ASOS and so on were being mentioned today about how they convert or how their content is organised. Any other questions for this session? I'll do one last call out. Yep, there's one at the back. We could get microphone 4. Thank you.
It's there's a disconnect between what Susan Greenfield said this morning and a lot of what the convention has been about. Because a good deal of the convention, sorry, I should say Ian Taylor, Travel Weekly, a good deal of the convention has been a hymn to the digital world, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what Susan Greenfield argued this morning was that that world is going to turn out a lot of obese, schizophrenic people with on the spectrum of autistic disorders, and that those are your future customers. Now, her argument is not uncontested, but it's a serious argument, and everyone in the room, people didn't walk out, people left thinking what a brilliant presentation and so on, but that's what she said. So what do the panellists think?
Just to add what Ian was saying there, of course, the two arguments aren't necessarily at odds with each other. I mean, you know, people sell hamburgers and people become obese. You know, there's a demand there for it. And, you know, so is there anything at odds, does the panel think, between all the technology presentations saying this is the reality, if you're not on board you're going to drown, and Susan saying you're killing everybody?
I think, Ian, you raise a valid point. I mean, however, there's a balance for everything, and I think that if you take things in isolation and at the extreme, then there is a potential conflict. But that's not, that's not the business that we're in. You've got to link people in technology and get them to embrace it and use it. And we're not all, the world's not going to turn into a bunch of nerds. It's just not going to happen. But ultimately, technology is a massive enabler, and getting your people connected with it and connected with the customer makes all the difference. So I don't agree there's a conflict. I think it's about balance.
Does anybody, does any of the panel think there is a conflict there? No.
No, I agree with you completely. I think to extend that point, it's about using the technology and digital as an enabler. But I actually think it's not just about those people in sort of customer-facing roles. I think it's throughout the organisation. And there was discussion earlier today around sort of brand and in particular the Virgin piece. I thought was really interesting. It's actually getting everybody in the whole organisation, whether that's HR or IT or whatever. It's everybody enabled in focusing on ultimately the consumer as opposed to just those people at the front end.
Final word.
Well, I think people have been, for as long as I can remember in my history books, people have been running scared of technology, whether it's from the spinning jenny, the locomotive, the motor car, whatever it is. There's been, if we drive at 60 miles an hour, somebody's going to get knocked over. Well, they might do, yes. But actually, all the benefits that it brings can outweigh some of the downside. And as long as we continue to learn from people like Baroness Greenfield of where the risks are and what it could do, hopefully ahead of time, then we can learn to use technology appropriately and to cut out some of the drudgery that we all have from time to time in our lives and move us to a more enriched world, which will get our brains going and get them active.
All right, on that note, I'm going to draw this session to a close. We're out of time, but please show your appreciation for Richard, Susan, Alistair, Julia and Fraser.